Guadalcanal, the night of November 14th, 1942. The sea is black as ink. No moon, no stars. Only faint sweeps of the Mark 8 radar move across the screen inside the control room of USS Washington. At nearly 18,000 yards, a giant shadow drifts slowly. Kirishima, the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the same ship that once stood at Pearl Harbor. The American crew cannot see their enemy, but they know exactly where she is. When the order, "Open fire," echoes through the ship, 9 16-inch guns erupt, tearing the darkness apart. In just a few minutes, the world of Japanese naval warfare collapses. Darkness, once their greatest ally, has become the traitor, and that night the Mark 8 radar killed an entire naval doctrine. Autumn 1942. The Pacific was no longer the ocean of quick victories. After Midway, Japan had lost 4 carriers, yet still held vast naval strength. On a war map, Guadalcanal was just another green island, but for both sides it was the gate between survival and extinction. Guadalcanal, 15 degrees south, 160 degrees east. A swampy island of jungle, fever, and silence. In August 1942, U.S. Marines landed there with one simple goal: seize an unfinished Japanese airfield. Within weeks, that muddy strip of earth became Henderson Field, the lifeline of the South Pacific. Japan understood perfectly. As long as Henderson stood, their entire supply route to New Guinea was cut. From August to November, the Imperial Navy launched endless counterattacks. They called them Tokyo Express, destroyer runs under cover of night, carrying men and ammunition through narrow channels. By day, the sky belonged to America. By night, the sea belonged to Japan. Since the 1920s, the Imperial Navy had built its entire doctrine around night supremacy. They believed skill and spirit would always defeat technology. Officers like Isoroku Yamamoto and Raizo Tanaka turned night fighting into art. Their ships carried the finest optical rangefinders in the world. Crews trained thousands of hours to estimate range by eye, to fire by the glow of flares, to change course within seconds. They didn't need radar. For Japan, victory came from discipline, not machines. But on the night of November 14, 1942, a new kind of light appeared on the waters they once ruled. USS Washington was launched in June 1940, one of the North Carolina class, America's first new battleships in 2 decades, 222 meters long, nearly 45,000 tons at full load, armed with 9 16-inch Mark 6 guns and capable of 28 knots. Yet what set her apart was not her armor or speed, but her brain, the Mark 8 fire control radar. While Japan trusted human eyes, Washington saw the world through electromagnetic waves. The Mark 8 could track a ship 20 kilometers away in total darkness and feed data into a mechanical computer. The Mark 1 fire control system, which calculated a perfect firing solution every second. This was no longer a battleship in the old sense. It was a machine of mathematics and steel. By late 1942, the waters between Guadalcanal and Savo Island were littered with wrecks. Hiei, Furutaka, Canberra, Astoria, Quincy. So many that sailors called it Iron Bottom Sound. But the night of November 14th would be different. No longer a duel between men peering through optics, but between light and electromagnetism. Vice Admiral Kondo approached with Kirishima, 2 heavy cruisers and 9 destroyers. His mission: silence Henderson Field once and for all. Facing him, Rear Admiral Willis Lee aboard USS Washington, with only 2 battleships, Washington and South Dakota, plus 4 destroyers. Fewer ships, but one invisible advantage. 11 p.m., Washington glided through black water, every light extinguished. On the radar scope, faint blips pulsed, each a heartbeat in the darkness. Lieutenant J.G. William Seitz reported, surface contact, bearing 300, range 18,000 yards. It was Kirishima. The order followed. Load armor piercing, target bearing 300. Yet no one could see the enemy. On Kirishima's bridge, lookouts still scanned the horizon with binoculars, unaware their ship had been locked in radar crosshairs for 10 full minutes. That night's outcome was no miracle. It was the result of a quiet revolution begun in 1939. The U.S. Navy had realized the age of solitary battleships was ending. Engineers at MIT and Bell Labs merged radar with electromechanical computers, creating the world's first automatic brain for naval gunnery. American doctrine changed with it. No single ship fights alone. Each vessel is one eye of a larger beast, the task force. The fast battleship was born. Vessels swift enough to escort carriers and strong enough to shield them under skies filled with enemy aircraft. North Carolina, South Dakota, Iowa, 3 generations in 4 years, each a leap forward in engineering and in philosophy. Japanese intelligence still described American battleships as slow, heavily armored, and blind at night. They couldn't imagine that radar had already turned darkness into daylight. When Hiei was sunk just days earlier, many believed it was luck. With Kirishima, they would learn it was evolution. Radar didn't just improve accuracy, it erased Japan's greatest advantage. Darkness, once their ally, became their enemy. Each time Washington turned, her guns adjusted automatically, guided by numbers rather than eyes. It was a duel between instinct and calculation was winning. The Mark 8 radar pulsed at 3,000 megahertz, feeding echoes into the Mark 1A computer. In seconds, it calculated bearing, elevation, wind, target speed, even Earth's curvature. This was not merely technology, it was the first real combat computer. Japan still relied on men behind rangefinders. America now let machines see for them. The gap between human vision and mechanical precision became the true front line of modern war. 11:15 p.m. Additional radar contacts appeared. 2 Japanese cruisers formed a triangle around Kirishima. South Dakota suddenly drew enemy fire. Brilliant flares ignited the sky, revealing her silhouette. It was the moment Admiral Lee had waited for. When the enemy revealed itself by light, radar had already locked the kill. Lee gave the command, "Commence firing, primary target Kirishima." 9 16-inch guns roared as one. 42 shells tore through the night at supersonic speed. Within 7 minutes, Kirishima was a burning carcass. In a survivor's words, "We saw nothing. We only heard hell open in the dark." Guadalcanal wasn't just another battle. It was the first proof that technology could overturn doctrine. America showed that radar could replace eyes, and data could replace instinct. For Japan, that night ended 20 years of belief in night supremacy. The age of visual warfare was over. From then on, every naval officer understood, he who sees first lives. November 14th, 1942. Iron Bottom Sound lies silent, its waters heavy with the wrecks of the week before. Flames still drift from the shattered hulks that line the horizon. Beneath that smoke, 2 American battleships, Washington and South Dakota, move through total darkness. They are not seeking glory. They are seeking balance between technology and blood. 11 p.m., Washington's radar picks up multiple contacts, 18,000 yards ahead, bearing 300 degrees. Vice Admiral Kondo's force is moving in column formation. The battleship Kirishima, 2 heavy cruisers, and 9 destroyers. They believe only damaged American ships remain near Guadalcanal. But in the unseen world of radio waves, every one of their movements is already exposed. Lieutenant Seitz, radar officer, reports quietly, multiple surface targets, bearings 298 to 312. On deck, the 9 16-inch guns begin to turn, slow, deliberate, mechanical. Inside, armor-piercing shells wait in their hoists. Washington herself remains invisible. The Japanese have no idea they are being watched by eyes that do not need light. 11:15 p.m. South Dakota, steaming off Washington's starboard, suddenly loses power. A short circuit plunges her into darkness, then flashes her lights back on for several seconds. In those seconds, her silhouette betrays the American position. Japanese guns respond instantly. The night erupts in orange flashes, 14-inch shells screaming across the sea. Explosions walk toward South Dakota. Flares burst overhead, painting the sky a sickly yellow. Washington remains unseen. Admiral Lee resists the urge to fire. He knows that once his guns speak too soon, radar's advantage vanishes. He waits until the enemy closes to 8,400 yards. The killing range. 11:31 p.m. Fire control reports, solution locked. The order passes down the steel corridors. Main battery, target Kirishima. Commence firing. Silence, then 9 guns unleashed together. Blinding light tears open the night. On Kirishima's bridge, Captain Iwabuchi hears the thunder rolling closer. Then water erupts all around. The first salvo lands true. 1 shell punches through turret number 3, detonating the magazine. 2 more rip into her steering compartments. In 3 minutes, Kirishima loses control. Her rudder jams hard. Power flickers and dies. Fire races through the decks. By 11:34, the Imperial Navy's pride is spinning helplessly in her own smoke. Impossible! They shoot accurately without sight. A gunnery officer whispers in disbelief as the next salvo slams home from beyond visible range. For 20 years, Japan had ruled the night. Now the night itself turns against them. Radar Mark 8 has stripped away their oldest weapon, darkness. Vice Admiral Kondo orders destroyers to make smoke and attack from the south, but the American radar pierces the haze as if it were air. Every turn of Washington's helm is mirrored by precise corrections from her mechanical computer. Man versus machine, and man is losing. 11:36 p.m. The 6th salvo finds its mark. A 2,700-pound shell penetrates the forward magazines. Another rips through the main deck. The bow explodes in flame. Kirishima begins to spin in slow circles, listing 10 degrees, 18. Crewmen leap into burning seas as compartments flood and ammunition cooks off. 11:40 p.m. Engines dead. 11:44 p.m. List exceeds 20 degrees. Admiral Kondo signals withdrawal. By 3:25 a.m., November 15th, Kirishima rolls over and slips beneath the waves, taking more than 300 souls with her. Washington suffers a single hit, minor damage. In his logbook, Admiral Lee writes one sentence: "The darkness no longer belongs to Japan." Dawn rises over Iron Bottom Sound. The sea is calm again, flat, deceptive, quiet. But history has shifted. Japan's mastery of night combat, speed, and surprise is gone. Radar Mark 8 has given America a new rule of war. Victory belongs not to those who move fastest, but to those who see first. The night no longer hides anything. After this battle, no major surface engagement will ever be fought in darkness again. Behind Washington's guns stood men no one saw. Engineers in laboratories at Bell Labs and MIT. They transformed invisible waves into eyes. Mark 8 radar, accurate within 200 yards at 20,000, became the terror Japan could not comprehend. Japanese sailors called it Western magic. The Americans called it science. Deep inside Washington's plotting rooms, operators turned dials, computed angles, and fed numbers into the mechanical brain that guided every shell. No statues bear their names, but each calculation meant one more hit. Victory came with a cost. On South Dakota's decks, fires raged. Dozens were dead or dying, cut down by 14-inch fragments and flames. Washington could not break radio silence to help. One wrong transmission could expose her position and undo everything radar had gained. The last minutes of the battle were fought in eerie quiet, only steam hissing from red-hot steel. Technology had delivered triumph, cold, efficient, and joyless. When the first report reached Tokyo, it contained a single chilling line. Enemy fired accurately in complete darkness. In the staff room of the combined fleet, silence fell. Yamamoto understood immediately. The empire that had once conquered with night eyes had been overtaken by an enemy that no longer needed light. Analysts argued whether it was trickery or a new device. Within days, engineers confirmed the Americans had mastered radar control gunnery. In a private diary, one officer wrote, "We fought with eyes. They fought with knowledge." Japan began rushing to build its own radar. It was already too late. Guadalcanal was more than the loss of a battleship. It was the end of an era. The Imperial Navy's doctrine of night superiority vanished overnight. The U.S. fleet, armed with radar and data links, became a single coordinated organism. Battles were no longer duels of captains. They were systems in motion. Japan, once a hunter in the dark, was forced into defensive war, fighting by instinct against an opponent guided by mathematics. Dawn, November 15th. Iron Bottom Sound glows red in the rising sun. Wreckage drifts quietly, oil shimmering like glass. Washington turns away without celebration. No cheers, no victory flares. The crew knows they have witnessed something larger than a battle. An age has ended, and a new one has begun. An age of radar, of computers, of warfare shaped by data instead of daylight. Admiral Willis Lee would later write, "It was not just a battle. It was the night mankind learned to see without eyes." Dawn, November 15, 1942. Dawn, November 15, 1942. Iron Bottom Sound drifts beneath a gray haze. Oil, ash, and blood ripple together over the still water. Beneath that calm surface lies Kirishima, and with her, the death of a doctrine. On USS Washington's deck, no one speaks. The men stare eastward as sunlight filters through smoke. They have won, but none of them feel victorious. A gunner murmurs, "I never saw a face. I fired at a blip. Now hundreds lie below us. War has changed. It is no longer courage and sight. It is mathematics, machinery, and probability." The thrill of triumph is replaced by a quiet fear. Fear of the power they now hold. In Tokyo, the combined fleet receives Kondo's message at 10 a.m. Kirishima sunk. Enemy fire accurate at night, possibly radar-controlled. The room falls silent. One officer whispers, "If that's true, we've already lost." Yamamoto says nothing. He understands before anyone else. The United States has built a machine Japan cannot match. From this moment, the war is no longer about ships. It is about industry, science, and time. Before Guadalcanal, Japan believed victory came from will and discipline, sation. But willpower cannot see in the dark. The Mark 8 radar exposed the empire's greatest weakness, its arrogance toward technology. While America invested in laboratories, Japan invested in ritual. While America trained engineers, Japan trained warriors. By the time they realized the truth, the gap had already become a chasm. Survivors pulled from the sea described the same nightmare. We saw nothing. The shells came from nowhere. There was no warning, only steel breaking, men screaming. Investigators first suspect new optics or a secret weapon. Yet fragments of American shells reveal ordinary 16-inch rounds, guided not by sight but by numbers. One report calls it hell in the dark. While Japan searches for answers, America moves ahead. By early 1943, every new U.S. ship, from destroyer to carrier, carries radar fire control. The fleet evolves into a single electronic organism. Radar ceases to be an accessory. It becomes the brain of naval war. At Pearl Harbor, the first Combat Information Center, the CIC, is born. Dozens of radar feeds converge into one real-time map of the Pacific. Japan has no such system. Its ships fight as individuals, blind and isolated. America fights as one body, eyes everywhere, hands everywhere. From that point on, night battles simply vanish. The dark no longer hides anyone. In the Yokosuka Naval Hospital, 400 Kirishima survivors lie burned and broken. Most are blind. Many are silent. Nurses write in their diaries. They don't speak of the enemy. They speak of the light that killed them. Among sailors, a new phrase spreads, Metsubo no Hikari, the light of annihilation. It is not a bomb or shell, it is radar. While Japan trembles, America accelerates. Scientists at Bell Labs and MIT push forward another secret, the VT fuse, a proximity fuse using miniature radar. If radar can see planes, a fuse can know when to explode. In March 1943, tests on the New Jersey coast prove it works. A shell now detonates within 25 feet of its target. One invention leads to another. Radar, the fuse, the network. Each builds upon the night of Guadalcanal, the night the world learned to fight by signal instead of sight. Tokyo holds a memorial for Kirishima. Speeches praise bravery, honor, sacrifice. But behind the words hides fear. The officers know their spirit has become their weakness. They are fighting faith with physics and losing. Admiral Toyota admits quietly, "We did not lose for lack of courage. We lost because we did not believe in the future." In desperation, Japan turns to suicide weapons, human torpedoes, kamikaze planes. Not strategy, desperation. Within every command post grows an inner torment. For decades, they were trained to trust the human eye, the perfect shot, the noble duel. Now machines have stolen that purpose. Officers ask themselves, if a machine can see for us, what are we? Some end their lives, others stay silent, hollow. Darkness, once a symbol of purity in Japanese culture, has become a synonym for defeat. As America advances, from Gilbert to the Marianas, from Saipan to Leyte, every fleet action begins the same way. Radar first, firing second. Fast battleships, Iowa, New Jersey, Missouri, now guard carriers, living embodiments of industrial war. Sailors repeat the Guadalcanal lesson. It's not who fires first, it's who sees first. A gunner aboard USS Iowa writes in his diary, "Every time I look at the radar, I remember Iron Bottom Sound, because that's where darkness died." By 1944, the technological gap is irreversible. The U.S. produces thousands of Mark 8 radars. Japan manages a few dozen primitive Model 22s. American factories turn out 20 million VT fuses from more than 100 companies. Japan, short of copper, steel, and engineers, cannot compete. Guadalcanal was not just a tactical victory. 3 years after Guadalcanal, the Pacific is quiet again. No thunder of guns, no columns of smoke, only the endless sound of waves rolling over a graveyard of steel. Beneath those waters, hundreds of ships rest, silent witnesses to a war that changed everything. In 1945, as American bombers turned Tokyo, Yokohama, and Hiroshima to ash, many Japanese admirals still believed they could turn the tide. They did not realize the war had ended the night Washington opened fire. That night proved a truth far greater than one battle. Japan could no longer see its enemy, neither with eyes nor with understanding. From Guadalcanal to the Philippine Sea, American radar saw farther, moved faster, struck first. Japan fought the War of 1941, America fought the War of 1945, and history never forgives those who fall behind the future. After Guadalcanal, radar became more than a weapon. It became a symbol of a new civilization. America entered the industrial age of total war. Mark 8 evolved into Mark 12, then Mark 37. The mechanical computer became the digital brain. Each battleship, each carrier, each destroyer, no longer a lone warrior, but a part of a living system. When Admiral Nimitz reviewed the radar development report, he wrote a single line: "We no longer fight ships, we fight systems." It was a sentence that defined the rest of the 20th century. At the dawn of the century, battleships were the icons of power. By 1942, they were relics of a fading age. Radar, aircraft, and data replaced brute armor. The battleship's throne passed quietly to the carrier and the circuit board. Washington, Iowa, Missouri, giants of steel continued to serve, but as guardians, not kings. Their 16-inch guns no longer aimed at ships. They fired skyward, forming walls of fire against kamikaze waves. Every blast echoed the night of 1942, the moment when a single radar beam dethroned an empire's pride. Between Guadalcanal and Savo Island lies Iron Bottom Sound, a name earned by death. More than 50 ships sleep there, American, Japanese, Australian. No nation claims victory over that water. Local fishermen still see oil bubbles rising from below, each one a breath from the past. Some call it a cemetery of metal, but for those who understand, it is a graveyard of illusions. Illusions that honor could defeat science. Illusions that willpower could replace knowledge. In that narrow stretch of sea, humanity learned to see without eyes and to kill without looking. When Japan surrendered, America did not stop. The war moved into the realm of the unseen. Radar became network. Network became computer. Computer became command. The Cold War that followed was not fought with swords, but with signals, each side racing to see first. The invisible war of electrons began the night Washington fired in darkness. That night, humanity did not conquer the dark. It absorbed it. In post-war interrogations, Japanese admirals spoke with quiet resignation. Admiral Matomu Ugaki wrote, "We were defeated not by strength, but by knowledge." In 1954, when Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force was reborn, its first Naval Academy lecture included this lesson: eyes never lie, but sometimes they see too little. The new Japanese Navy was built not on swords, but on circuits. On every modern Japanese warship, radar hummed softly, a constant reminder of Kirishima and of the night when pride met precision. Across the Pacific, engineers who built the Mark 8 returned home. They did not call themselves heroes. One of them, William E. Elder, told a reporter in 1947, "We didn't build radar to kill. We built it to prove that darkness could be understood." His words echoed through a new century, a century where knowledge replaced faith and calculation replaced instinct, but also a century where machines began to see more than their makers. The radar's pulse was the heartbeat of a new world, one that would soon create computers, satellites, and eyes that never blink. When machines began to see for man, a question was born. Who bears responsibility for what the machine sees? Technology saves lives and ends them with equal precision. On that November night, radar made victory possible, but also made killing distant, abstract, almost invisible. The sailors on Washington never saw faces, no screams, no silhouettes, only a dot that disappeared. Humanity had entered a new age, where death came through numbers, not eyes. The moral burden of that progress still haunts the sea. After the war, USS Washington became a training vessel, then was scrapped in 1961. No grand ceremony, no monument. Just a small plaque in the U.S. Naval Museum, first battleship to sink an enemy battleship by radar control. A single line to mark the turning of an age. History remembers heroes who charged forward. Washington's crew fought by standing still, trusting a screen and believing in what they could not see. They fired blind and rewrote the rules of war. If Iron Bottom Sound teaches anything, it is this. Real power is not in firepower, but in foresight. From radar to satellite, from computer to artificial intelligence, all progress begins with the same question. Can we see what the eye cannot? Guadalcanal answered, yes, but it also whispered a warning. The moment you can kill without seeing, you risk forgetting that you are killing at all. That is the true hell of technology. Its cold perfection, its distance from consequence. Humanity gained sight that night and lost a piece of its soul. 8 decades later, divers still find Kirishima resting 1,000 meters below Iron Bottom Sound. Her hull is torn open, her turrets tilted at impossible angles. Inside the control room, a small notebook was found, its pages preserved by silt and silence. The final line written in Japanese, "We fought in darkness, but the enemy saw us first. Perhaps that is all history ever is. A story of those who saw first and those who did not.